I swear to God, dude, like, there's some schools that, like, dead ass, they are literally, like, the runt of the, they are, like, the baby that no one wanted. Like, the broken, use protection, my man, you know? Use good protection. We're talking about the mid school, my man. Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here, and right before we start this very special video on this wonderful Wednesday, drop a like if you like these type of videos where I give my opinion on really cool things in this game. I've been trying to do these kind of videos for a while. I just haven't been doing it, you know, so let me know what you guys think before we even start. Alright, so without further ado, what we're about to do during this episode is go through all of the schools. Whoa, I'm sorry, jazz hands was good. All of them in Wizard101 and pick out what I think is the best school for best spell for every single school. And what the criteria for choosing this is going to be based on is usefulness in all levels of PvP and sometimes in PvE. But it's going to be a really important. There's gonna be there's a joint is gonna be placed an importance on PvP. So that's what this video is about. Without further ado, let's start with ice. Now I know what you guys are thinking. You're gonna think I'm gonna choose abominable, but really what I am gonna choose for the best ice spell for PvP across all the levels is, and there's a reason why I am in the joints of the world where I'm in Azteca, it is my man's Lord of Winter. Now, Lord of Winter is a very cool spell for many reasons. Now, the reason why Lord of Winter is the one that I chose is because Lord of Winter can take away 3 pips along with doing all that damage, and it's very powerful if you time it right. It can completely ruin a combo from your opponent, especially if you're second and they have a lot of pips. They can't even use the pips that they have on the same round, and it does a ton of damage. It's it's a very common strategy, even at low levels, for you to minion and then break all the shields with the minion and then do an open shot with Lord of Winter and basically cripple your opponent's ability to heal by stealing all of their pips. It's a very good combo. Definitely one of the best ones that Ice has, and it's severely underestimated, even in top level PvP, my mans. Now, without further ado, let's get to the next school. It is a color that I'm wearing. Ooh, fire! Fire has some of the best PvP techniques, you know, like they have overtimes, which is what they're known for. When you're going through their spells, they have a lot of really useful spells. For example, they have Brimstone, which, you know, hits and traps. When they have overtimes, it's a very powerful thing. They have Krampus, which is really good for stalling. They have a Frizzle by Nizzle, you know, it's really good with a -90. They have FFA. They have all kinds of overtimes. Link, Power Link, Fire Elf. They have all kinds of joints, my man. So in choosing what is the best PvP spell for Fire, you have to think about what will give you the biggest advantage when you use it, you know? Like, when it comes to a lot of these spells, it's all about achieving multiple things in one turn. And when it comes to combos, you know, a very good spell, and this is a very honorable mention, like very close second, Fire Beetle. Fire Beetle is really great because it's a very cheap hit and trap kind of spell. But the one that wins in this category, my mans, is going to be my man's Fire Elf. Now, the reason why I think that Fire Elf is such a good fire spell, especially for PvP, is because in low level, people use Fire Elf throughout all the schools. It's just amazing. It's a very cheap overtime. And if you're running low on Deathbat TCs, you can easily train it. Now, Deathbat is a much cheaper, technically, for low level overtime, but you cannot enchant a Deathbat, you know? And ever since the buff that they actually made onto Fire Elf, it's actually one of the most powerful 2-pip spells. It compares very well to Lightning Bats, and honestly, for the amount of versatility that it has, it's high damage and spammable, and it does an overtime. And from second, if you use this and then you use a stun, as long as your opponent hasn't been absolutely shield spamming your life away, you will have a very open hit even at high levels. It's a very underrated spell. Never underestimate the power of a Fire Elf into a stun, into an open shot. It is one of the most premier strategies in Wizard 101. Alright, we are going to get on to, you guessed it, my man's the Storm Wizards. Now, for Storm, what I'm about to show you guys is definitely a very, very hard spell to get. Now, this is a very, very important clarification, and if you guys have been watching this channel for a while, you'll probably already know what spell I'm about to pick. Now, let's talk about Storm. Storm is high damage, low accuracy. That doesn't really become a problem when you have infouls or when you have gear that gives you a ton of accuracy, but the real problem with them in PvP is that they have a lot of solid hit spells. Even their high level spells like Iron Sultan. I mean, Iron Sultan just basically only hits. King Art basically only hits. You know, if people don't have blades, Leviathan basically only hits. Triton only has damage. Kraken, Stormzilla, you know, Storm Shark, Lightning Bats. Unlike a lot of the other schools, you know, when you do hit with something, it is only focused on damage. Even their lore spells do very little other than just damage. Now, Calypso, you can argue that it gives a trap. How useful really is that if you really think about a 20% trap? And how really useful is a minus 25 mantle from Catalan? You know, it's not that useful, but those are honorable mentions because at least they achieve multiple things in one turn. Now, there's a very, very important spell that also achieves a lot in one turn for Storm, and that is the mutated version of Fire Elf, which is Lightning Elf. But the one that wins in this category, no questions asked, by far, is the following spell, my mans. And I know you guys, some of y'all already know what I'm about to do. It is this spell, my mans. It is the Thunderbird Spell. It is extremely overpowered for a Storm. You know, like, you can, let's say someone has a stun block and you really, really are desperate for a hit and achieving something else. A Thunderbird is the way to go. It's very, very cheap for the amount of damage, and the traps are extremely powerful. If you're bolt spamming, use this before you bolt spam, okay? Like, it'll make you infinitely more powerful. If you have a Shrike, use this before you Shrike or in Shrike. It'll give you double the backlash reduction. There's all kinds of things that you can do with this. And a school that lacks, being a school that lacks overtimes, it's very, very important that you have buffs. So if you are going to be hitting through shields a lot, at least you have some traps to do it with. Now, Storm does not have too many versatile spells. I'll give you that, you know? But this one is by far one of the most tested and true Storm spells that you could possibly get in Wizard 101. Now, balance is really, really cut and dry. I mean, obviously, we have Lord Master, we have, you know, the Gaze of Fate, you know, we have, that's about it. But, there is one spell, and this is a spell that I think is severely underused. I'm going to tell you guys why, alright? And there's a very specific reason why I'm choosing this. There's a reason why Lord Master is so good. I know a lot of people say it has high damage for 4 pips, and that's true, you're not wrong. And the accuracy debuff is also a very, very powerful thing. Minus 35% is a lot, you know, I'll give you that much. But really, the reason why Lord Master is powerful is because of its weakness. It would not be anywhere close to as used if it had slightly lower damage or if it had only an accuracy debuff. You would want to do more than just spam Lore Master. Now, I can't guarantee that would be like that because you have no way of knowing, but I can tell you that the weakness means a lot. And why do weaknesses mean a lot? Well, weaknesses mean a lot because Pierce is irrelevant when it comes to weakness. It's why an Efreet weakness doesn't get weaker just because you have higher Pierce. So the reason weakness is so much better than a shield, especially now, is because whether you have an overtime or you have high Pierce, shields are limited. You know, an overtime will take one shield and it'll do a ton of damage overall. But weaknesses are mandatory. They will affect you and every single spell that comes out of you, you know? So for that reason, and especially because of its versatility in terms of how other schools can use it, weakness is the winner for Balance's best PvP spell in Wizard 101. Now, I do know what you guys are thinking. Sauce, what about Mana Burn? What about Supernova? Well, Supernova is definitely a very good one, I'll give you that, but it's situational. People can just avoid using auras around you, and honestly, they don't have to. At low levels, it can be a very, very cool surprise move, I'll give you that. but it's situational, and that's why it's not as good. And Mana Burn, as much as it can control the rhythm of the battle, it's almost only useful from first. You'd have to anticipate that your opponent is not going to use their pips, and if they expect you to Mana Burn, they might use their pips in a very unpredictable way. And for that reason, for what is the safest best spell, I'm going to have to still go with weakness. A minus 30 weakness is devastating to any hit, okay? Like, you cannot underestimate that. In every single manner of speaking, a minus 30 weakness does more to weaken your opponent than a minus 55% shield will ever do. I want to clarify that. You have more than 30 pierce in PvP as a max. Every school does. A weakness is by far a better spell to use than a tower shield ever will be. The only reason towers are used more is because it gives the illusion that it actually protects you a lot more. But if you really think about it, since tower shields do get pierced, the actual reduction is so much better through weaknesses, and that's why it's very underrated. There's a new video that I'm going to be making on this specifically, but for now, that is the best balanced PvP school spell, my man. The spell that I'm about to show you absolutely changed the dynamics of 1v1 in Wizard101 forever, alright? And that's why this is really, really important, you know? And no, it's not just being able to heal. It's not, you know, it's not just being able to do an absorb, you know? It's not being able to do some dispels with it. Those are all, it's Mighty Sword, that's a really cool spell. Those are all really, really great spells. But what I'm about to tell you guys is that the spell that I'm about to show you is by far one of the most changing spells in the history of PvP. And that is this spell right here. Triage, when it came out, it caught the Wizard101 community by storm, because suddenly you actually have a way of like actually countering an overtime. Now Shift came around a little later for Myth, but Triage is still the best thing that you could possibly do. It's 0 pips. Even if you're just anticipating an overtime from second, if you don't have anything else to do, you could always just Triage. You won't even lose pips, and you have a chance of anticipating an overtime from second. And if you're first, people will not use overtimes on you at all if you have this. You know, if you're a life wizard and someone uses an overtime on you from second, all right, they are going to need a very good follow-up so that if you triage, you're going to be open and they're going to hit you. And no matter what, you'll still gain some health over them. You'll still gain so much health for the amount of pips that they spent on the overtime. Overtimes are always priced at higher pips than they should be for the damage that they do because they are an overtime. They have so much utility, you know? So the reason why this is so good is because you will gain pips on your opponent, nullify their damage, and also make sure they waste a lot of pips. So you get more pips, they get fewer pips, and you save yourself a ton of health. It achieves so much, it can totally shift the dynamic of a PvP match, and for that reason, it is by far life's best PvP spell. Bam! Death is a very, very interesting school. It has overtimes and drains all over the place, you know, like whether we're talking about Death Bat, which is just 1 pip, Poison, 4 pips, or Skeletal Dragon, which is, you know, 8 pips, all the way up to Avenging Fossil, which is still an overtime. It has a lot of good, solid overtime hits. But one thing that that's painfully obvious, when you discount the Shadow pips, most of Death's direct hits are drains. And the problem with drains is that when you enchant a drain, half of it goes to the health that you get out of it, and half of it goes to the damage that you do out of it. I'm not sure a lot of people realize this, because an enchanted Krulu does miles less than an enchanted Winged Sorrow, even though their damage is pretty comparable. You know, like that 830 versus, you know, like it's 850 to 1030. A low-end Winged Sorrow will do tons more than a Call of Krulu. And that was a serious problem for a long time. And one spell that really changed that was Deer Knight. You know, we had a good spell, you know, for a pretty low amount of pips. You know, it was an overtime, but it did a lot of damage, and that was great. But the problem with this, even though it's a direct hit, it is still an overtime. So this spell that I'm about to show you, in my opinion, saved Death School a lot of trouble in the long run. Whether it's low level, especially low level, or even high level, Headless Horseman is one of the best things to happen to the Death School since it came out. You know, like, this solves a major problem with Death, and it's that they don't have solid hits to enchant. You can spam this, you can. I mean, you won't be as good with it because it doesn't have any secondary effects, but it's a really good finisher. If you have high pierce and high damage, it's devastating if you do it as an open hit. Low pip cost, and a lot of the damage doesn't go down just because it's an overtime. So this is an extremely good PvP spell. I totally recommend trying to get it, especially when the next time the Gloomthorn pack comes out, or when they make this craftable inevitably. This is one of the best death spells you could use in PvP by far, and don't you ever forget it, my man. I swear to God, dude, like, there's some schools that, like, dead ass, they are literally like the runt of the, they are like the baby that no one wanted, like the broken. Use protection, my man. You know, use good protection. We're talking about the Myth school, my man. Myth is the least chosen school out of all of them. So why would it even be on this list? Well, first off, equality is a great idea, but I had this opinion on Myth for a really long time, and it really changed recently because of one spell. And even though I don't have a Myth on this account, I'm still about to show you guys the spell right now, and I think you can guess it just based on this. Yes, my mans, it is Witch's House Call, also known as the Baba Yaga spell. Now, at first, when I saw the spell, you know, it kind of blew my mind because it was a very, very solid one shot, you know, like, and again, Myth does not have that as easily. The last solid one shot that they had, truthfully, was, you know, like, Keeper of the Flame, maybe, you know, and that's not even a main school thing, you know? I mean, they have Minotaur and Orthros, and those are great, but they also, when you enchant it, a lot of the damage goes to the first hit, and the whole point of using them is that you break a shield and then hit, so you're losing a lot of the enchant's value on a part of the hit that's not even meaningful, because you're going to waste that on a shield anyways. So as far as open hits go, it's very, very powerful. Damage per pip is really good, but the reason why it's making the list for the best PvP school for Myth is because of the minions. Now the minions, again, I thought they were useless. One of the minions can cast Satyr. Another one of the minions can cast stuns, and the third minion will buff you up like crazy. And one of, I forgot which one it is, I'm pretty sure it's the one that stuns, but it's extremely utility based because it can also do an overtime. And when it comes to Myth, overtimes are godly. You really, when you can limit the shield that someone puts on as a Myth, it's really, really easy to win. You know, you have double hits, you know, you have King Art, you know, you have Basilisk, you have all kinds of spells that really, really do well when the opponent has either one shield or fewer shields. Baba Yaga is one of those spells that I would hit with through a shield just for the secondary effect, no questions asked. I say that you should not underestimate the value of a minion. People will waste pips on the minion, and the minions can be extremely useful if your opponent foolishly decides to keep them alive. So never underestimate the power of the Yaga. Finally, we're at the last three schools, which are the Astral schools, my mans. And we are going to start off strong with Star. I think it's a very, very, very good spell that I'm about to show you guys. Very underused, actually. And it's this one right over here. Okay, Adapt is a very, very cool spell because you gain an entire power pip from incoming spells ranked 6 and above. And it's related to the Empowerment spell, which gives you one for all incoming spells with 4 pips or above. Now, why is the 4 pip a really good thing? 6 pip is even, you know, it's not even that bad either. Here's the thing, right? When it comes to people who actually use 6 pip hits, that won't be something that you see happening very, very often, all right? But the reason why Empowerment is a very cool spell in itself is because of the whole 4 pip. The 4 pip is a very magic number. You can cast a Satyr on yourself, and you can essentially have a 3 pip Satyr, because you get a pip back. You can use anything that has some kind of effect on you and get a pip. You can use an Athena on someone else and then get a shield, and because there's an effect on you from that shield, you can make your Athena 4 pips, you know? Now, if you do have, you can situationally use Adapt, but the reason why I think this type of Astral spell is really great is because you don't have to rely on your opponent to get pips. And a lot of people don't realize that because they don't think that a Satyr will actually give you a pip, but it will. It's very, very useful if you were running low on pips, if you have too many white pips, or if you need one extra white pip for like an odd pip spell. You can totally, like let me just give you an example, right? Let's say you have 3 power pips, right? If you have 3 power pips in your life and you're low on health, you realize that if you actually were to heal right just now, the only thing you'd be able to do with your Shadow Pip next round is Yamasu. And Yamasu is great, but you want the protection from the Hungry Caterpillar. The Empowerment would be a really great spell to use in that case, because not only will you get a pip from your satyr that you use to heal, you might also get more pips from whatever your opponent uses on you. It does not work against balance, but obviously all the Star School spells don't. That's just one example I'm using with Life and Myth, but there's tons of ways you can be creative with it, and I challenge you to use spells that have effects on you with Empowerment and see what kind of strategies you can use with it, my mans. Now, let's go on to the Moon School, my mans. Now, the Moon School has a lot of polymorphs, but the ones that I am going to focus on are the shift spells. This one, my mans, is the one that I'm about to choose for you guys. Shift Green Oak, very, very great spell. The reason why I love it is because normally on my death or any other school that blade stacks, it's very, very easy that, you know, you can rely on blade stacking into a Myth Banshee into a shadow hit. So you hit them, they are stunned, and you break their shield, and you get rid of weaknesses, and then you use an open hit on them. But what if they stun block? Well, Shift Green Oak is a very, very good answer, because let's say they stun block, you can still break shields, weaknesses, get a blade out of it, and honestly, the blade will counteract another shield if they so choose to use one. So this is a very, very good spell. I highly recommend using it. Even Myth Wizards can use it if they want a blade stack. Life Wizards can not use it, unfortunately, because of the life damage. However, I do want to say that there is so much opportunity for all the schools besides Life to use it, you know? So, I mean, I know when you think of blade stacking, you generally think of Life, Death, and Myth, but even Fire can blade stack. Ice can blade stack, you know? Like, there are schools that can use this that definitely don't. Finally, my man's, the best sun spell of them all is a retired spell. Of course, it is our Lord and Savior, Elucidate. Now, obviously, I think this one goes without question, enchants are great, accuracy enchants are great, but let's just be honest, having a 0-pip fairy or a 2-pip satyr will make your opponent rage, and it'll give you the pleasure of being the best wizard in Wizard101, my mans. So yeah, guys, that is my opinion on what I thought were the best schools in every single school in Wizard101, obviously with the exception of Shadow, but I think the reason why I kind of left that out was because I still put, you know, I kind of shadow spells, you know, shadow infused joints, you know, like with Witch's House Call and stuff. So, in my opinion, those are the best shadow spells. So, yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. If someone hasn't told you awesome, they're doing something wrong, do you agree with my opinion? Let me know in the comments, and let me know what kind of video of this nature you want me to do in the future, giving my opinions on things in this game. Drop a like, my man, and if someone hasn't told you awesome today, they doing something wrong. So, stay awesome, bruh. And yeah.